Welcome everyone to another episode of World Gone Weird, where we try to make sense of, well, everything that's happening. It feels like the world just keeps getting weirder, doesn't it?
Oh, it's not getting weirder. It is weird. I think we've just reached peak weird. Like, I'm expecting to see a headline any day now about a cat being elected president or something.
Don't give them ideas, Sarah. Seriously? Though, I suppose a cat couldn't do much worse than some of the politicians we've got now. Anyway, what are we diving into today? More doom and gloom, or is there a glimmer of something positive?
Glimmers are increasingly rare, aren't they? Though there's this article about an aerosol industry event in China. I know, stick with me. It highlights innovation, all these specialized products and technologies, but I find myself wondering about the larger implications.
Innovation, huh? That's something positive, right? Always good to see people trying to improve things. What kind of innovations are we talking about?
Well, everything from high-purity medical oxygen filling machines to spray cream aseptic process filling equipment. Stuff that, on the surface, seems beneficial. But then you dig a little deeper and you think about resource extraction, waste disposal, and the sheer scale of it all. Like, is this progress is necessarily good progress?
Oh, I'm sure spray cream aseptic process filling equipment is going to save the world, one perfectly sterile dollop of whipped cream at a time. Seriously, though, that's a lot of spray. What's the environmental cost?
Exactly. What kind of regulations are in place? Are they actually enforced? This is China we're talking about after all. And of course, who benefits? Are we talking about genuine improvements for consumers or just clever marketing ploys designed to sell us more stuff we don't need?
Okay, let's not get too cynical. Maybe some of these innovations are genuinely helpful, like the medical oxygen filling machines. That sounds like it could save lives, right? Or I saw baby beluga compound lysostatin antibacterial aerosol. That sounds interesting.
Potentially helpful, yes. But baby beluga compound lysostatin antibacterial aerosol. What are the long-term effects of spraying that stuff around? What happens when antibiotic resistance kicks in? We develop a new spray. It feels like we are treating the symptoms instead of the problem.
Lysostatin? Sounds like something Dr. Evil would cook up in his lab. And isn't that just more antibacterial everything, which, last I checked, is contributing to the superbug apocalypse? Maybe we should focus on, I don't know, washing our hands?
And what about the Join coffee that won a special award? What makes it so special? I bet it's some ridiculous gimmick, like they infuse it with unicorn tears or something. And the energy and waste put into that?
Maybe it's just really good coffee. Come on, a little optimism. Innovation can be about improving quality of life, not just creating more stuff.
I agree it could be. And perhaps the Joy in coffee does taste great. But as a scientist, I have to be skeptical. What chemicals are involved in the extraction or preservations? I do not want to sound cynical, but is any research being done for long-term effects?
I bet you anything Join coffee has like 15 different kinds of sugar in it, and that's why people are joining it. We are talking about China. Are regulations on sugar like America? And they get a special award. We're doomed.
It's the same problem with these aerosol paints they're celebrating. HI Coverage water-based wall paint and Lovosk water-based aerosol paint and Lovosk water-based aerosol paint. Sounds great, but what's the life cycle analysis? How much energy goes into producing these low VOC paints? What are the emissions from that process? Are they just shifting the pollution somewhere else?
Okay, but the fact that they're trying to reduce VOCs is a good thing, right? It's a step in the right direction. We can't expect everyone to be perfect overnight.
True, the intention is admirable, but it is like reducing carbon emissions, but we burn trash to do it. We must ask, at what cost? And for how long are the VOCs being reduced?
Yeah, I'm sure the people whose water supply gets contaminated by the factory making the low VOC paint are thrilled that they're doing their part for the environment. It's always someone else who pays the price, isn't it?
Exactly. And this whole event being in China, they're rapidly industrializing, churning out products at an insane rate. What are the environmental regulations like really? And what happens to all this stuff when it becomes obsolete?
Well, maybe this exhibition is a sign that they're starting to take environmental concerns more seriously. They're showcasing these innovative products. Maybe it's a sign of progress.
I want to believe you. I truly do. But until I see concrete evidence of systemic change, I remain skeptical. These are individual products. What about the overall system? Are they addressing that?
Oh, I'm sure they're addressing it right after they finish celebrating the Innovation Forum. It's all about appearances, isn't it? Make it look green, make it look innovative, and people will buy it, even if it's basically the same old toxic sludge in a slightly different can.
And that brings us back to the algorithms, doesn't it? Social media feeds are curated to show us what we want to see, what we're likely to buy. So, if you're already inclined to believe that green products are a scam, you'll see more content reinforcing that belief, and vice versa.
That's the problem, isn't it? These information bubbles. We're all living in our own little echo chambers, hearing only what confirms our existing beliefs. It makes it so hard to have a rational conversation about anything, let alone complex issues like environmental policy or global trade.
Exactly. It is confirmation bias on steroids, and the algorithms feed it perfectly. Are there safeguards to filter what data can get to a person? Are there programs that have double-blinded studies to see its effects, rather than it be something that is anecdotal? I do not know.
And the thing is, these algorithms are getting smarter all the time. They know exactly what buttons to push to keep us scrolling, to keep us engaged. It's like they're mining our brains for data, then selling it back to us in the form of targeted advertising and emotionally charged news stories.
And it's not just advertising, it's political messaging too. These platforms are being weaponized to manipulate public opinion, to sow division, to undermine trust in institutions. It's incredibly dangerous.
So what do we do? How do we break out of these echo chambers? How do we get people to listen to different perspectives, to engage in constructive dialogue?
That is the million-dollar question, Otto. Education is key. Critical thinking skills need to be taught from a young age. Understanding how algorithms work, recognizing bias, seeking out diverse sources of information. These are all essential skills in the modern world.
Good luck with that. Half the population can't even tell the difference between a real news story and a meme with a cat wearing a tiny hat. We're basically living in the Idiocracy movie now.
The youth are especially vulnerable. They grew up with this stuff. Social media is their primary source of information, their primary means of communication. How do you teach someone to be critical of something that's so integral to their identity?
Well, we have to try. We have to find ways to reach young people, to show them the dangers of these filter bubbles, to encourage them to think for themselves. Maybe we can show them how to create algorithms with an understanding of the danger that bias can create, and allow them to filter information effectively.
Perhaps, but it requires a fundamental shift in how we approach education. Less rote memorization, more critical analysis. Less passive consumption, more active engagement. And we need to empower teachers to facilitate these conversations, to create safe spaces for students to explore different perspectives.
And how do you propose we pay for all this? Because last I checked, schools are already struggling to afford basic supplies, let alone cutting-edge critical thinking programs. And in some states, you have to fight to teach actual history.
It's a systemic problem. We need to address the underlying economic inequalities that are driving this polarization, that are making people so susceptible to misinformation and manipulation. People who are struggling to make ends meet don't have the time or energy to engage in critical thinking. They're just trying to survive.
So we need to tackle poverty, improve education, promote critical thinking, and regulate social media algorithms. Sounds easy, right? Seriously, though, it feels overwhelming. Where do we even start?
One step at a time. Start with ourselves. Be mindful of our own biases. Seek out diverse perspectives. Engage in respectful dialogue. And encourage others to do the same. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a start.
Yeah, and maybe unplug once in a while. Go for a walk in nature. Talk to a real human being. You know, the kind that doesn't have a profile picture and a carefully curated online persona. It may save your sanity.
I agree with Sarah for once. We need to find ways to disconnect from the constant barrage of information, to reclaim our attention, to reconnect with ourselves and our communities. I think that might reduce our fear of the outside.
Absolutely. It's about finding a balance, isn't it? Using technology as a tool, but not letting it control us. Being informed, but not overwhelmed. Being connected, but not isolated. It's a challenge, but it's one we have to face if we want to build a better future.
And let's not forget the importance of holding these tech companies accountable. They have a responsibility to address the harms their platforms are causing. They cannot hide behind the guise of free speech when their algorithms are actively amplifying hate and division.
Oh, I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg is just quaking in his boots right now. He's too busy building the metaverse so we can all escape into a virtual reality where nothing matters and no one can touch us. Which, honestly, is starting to sound pretty appealing.
The metaverse will probably be worse. Anyway, the real thing is the real people. We need to make sure they get the access and the knowledge to see the world for what it is and start working to make it better, if that is even possible.
Well, that's a slightly depressing note to end on, but I think it's also a realistic one. The challenges are immense, but we can't give up hope. We have to keep striving for a better world, even if it feels like we're fighting an uphill battle. Even if the only thing we can do is to have these conversations, hopefully that can begin to make a difference.
Agreed. The universe is indifferent. We have a choice as a society. Choose to ignore the science and the facts, or choose to use them. We have to make the right choice if we wish to survive.
All right, I suppose that's as good a place as any to wrap things up. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Try to stay sane out there, and remember, even if the world is weird, it's also kind of interesting, in a horrifying train wreck sort of way.
Exactly. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep challenging assumptions, and keep fighting for a better future, even if it feels like nobody's listening.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode of World Gone Weird. Stay curious and stay engaged.